Okay, Pacific greetings. I believe the room is open. The webinar is happening live, so I can see people entering. So we want to welcome you all from the different parts of the world, and thank you very much for joining. Most importantly, thank you to our group of panelists and the co-host organization, COLEAD. Iselina, what do you think? Should we kick off? Okay, fantastic.
People will coming, we can start, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll start by introducing myself. So my name is Kyle Stice from Pacific Farmer Organizations, a network of farmer organizations in 14 Pacific Island countries. And we are very excited to partner with COLEAD. And I'll introduce my friend Iselina. Iselina will be co-hosting or co-facilitating this webinar series with us. Iselina is the head of networks and alliances at COLEAD. And COLEAD is a nonprofit association of private sector, agri-food sector, and working in many regions, EU, Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. And Iselina is no stranger to the Pacific. We've worked over the last 15 or so years directly with her in various roles, including formerly with CTA. So it's so exciting to be reconnected with Iselina and to have this platform to be able to talk about the agro-processing sector. So if you're joining, just to make sure you're in the right place, we're going to be talking about agro-processing development in the Pacific. What are some of the opportunities? What are some of the constraints? And then how can we contribute to make this a much more vibrant sector? So I will now hand it over to Iselina to introduce the chairman of COLEAD.
Thank you very much, Kyle, and hello everybody. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. We have a very many time zones actually here. For me, it's the evening in Brussels. I'm very pleased to be with you. I thank very much the panelists, the participants, and I'm very pleased to reconnect with the Pacific. I have only good rememberings actually, so it's great. Without major delay, we have not so long time, to discuss really a key topic. And for that, for the first session and the launch, we are very pleased as well to have the COLEAD. COLEAD was the former COLEAD ACP. We changed a name earlier this year, so it's always different pronunciations as well. But COLEAD today, we have our chairman, Stephen Minta, is joining us late as well from Ghana. Is our chairman since 2013. Is also, of course, a private sector operator, since we are an association of private sector operators, non-for-profit, and is the general director as well of a SPEC, which is Sea Freight Pineapple Exporters of Ghana. He has an economic background, but he has also a banking background in agriculture. He joined the Ghanaian Agriculture and Development Bank, where he was in charge of funding and deepening his knowledge of the agriculture sector. He brings a lot of experience. He's a very actually passionate about the private sector, and in particular with the MSMEs, and in particular with strong links to the smallholders, which is also what we all agree around this table. So please, Mr. Minta, if for the first one, for the launch of this series, you could just share a few words with us. And unmute yourself, Mr. Minta, please, yes. Thank you. No, it's still not, we still do not hear you. If you try, sometimes technology is helping and sometimes it's less helping. In the meantime, I will tell you as well that from COLEAD, an association, as I said, of private sector operators, non-for-profit. This series we are very pleased to launch with Pacific Farmers Organization and Kind Ties in particular. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Asolina, for your nice introduction. And let me take this opportunity to thank Mr. Kyle Stiles for the opportunity to join you in this launch of Roundtable series and a topic that is also personally dear to my heart and I think is very important for this moment, that is growing resilience, strengthening the agro-processing sector in the Pacific Islands. I think today we will have the opportunity to learn from a lot of stories from presenters, and then we from the other regions of the world will all benefit from the information that we are sharing today. I'm very grateful to be with you in this launch of this Roundtable series. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to express my sincere appreciation to all of you on behalf of the board of COLEAD, the management of COLEAD, and the staff of COLEAD for enabling me to join you today in the launch of the Pacific Farmers Organization PIFO and COLEAD series aimed at discussing best practices in the agro-processing sector in the Pacific Islands and the key role of the private sector. I think there are a lot of things to be learned today. And as the chairman of a non-for-profit organization of private sector operators in the agri-food sector, COLEAD, which just celebrated its 50th anniversary last December, I am very pleased to be part of this initiative, which emphasizes the contribution of the private sector in contributing to sustainable food systems, building resilience to climate change impacts, and supporting health and nutrition efforts in the region. Indeed, I am particularly happy that the PIFO and COLEAD have started this collaboration this year. And I think there are a lot of things ahead of this collaboration. Thank you very much for making it possible. In this context, maximizing the value of local and traditional people foods in supporting food and nutrition security, supporting value addition, and increasing opportunity for operators in domestic and regional markets and income for value chain actors are certainly priorities for all of us. And I wish to comment on the priority of the Pacific region is to increase the value addition of traditional staple crops such as breadfruit, taro, cassava, sweet potato, and others, improving nutrition and food security and providing new opportunities for domestic markets. I'm particularly excited for these priorities indicated by the Pacific region. COLEAD certainly will want to share its expertise and good practices across regions and value chains, especially on quality and certification schemes, food safety compliance, opportunities in niche markets, product development, diversification strategies, traceability, to name a few, a lot more that we will share with you in this series. Those areas are critical to the competitiveness and sustainability of the agri-processing sector. Many of COLEAD members, including some of them we have in Ghana, and I'm excited that I will have some experiences to share with them. And the beneficiaries have extensive experience in branding, packaging, and labeling strategies. And we will be happy to share best practices and skills development of interest to the agro-processing sector with you. In this series, the PIFO and COLEAD will give the voice to the private sector operators, farmers, cooperatives, processors, traders, and learn from their successes, innovations, and challenges and experiences, and bring the experiences of all these experts and partners supporting private sector development, such as researchers, policymakers, and finance experts. I can see a lot of ideas coming forward today in the presentation that we have ahead of us. I wish to stress that COLEAD remains available to provide the best of those services and experience in capacity development and training, market insights, technical assistance, and business development. I wish to take this opportunity once again to thank you very much for your attention and wish a very successful partnership with Pacific Farmer Organization and COLEAD in support of growing resilience, strengthening the agro-processing sector in the Pacific Island. And I look forward to an interesting exchange at our session today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Minta, for being with us. Very much appreciated. So I don't have very much to add, Kyle, to this series. I mean, they will be focusing on agro-processing, showcasing, best practices and sharing, as you have seen already in the chat, across countries as well in the region. Just my greetings from our DG, Jeremy Knopf, and also just to say that from our side, they are possible with the support of the European Union, the European Commission in particular, as well as the group of African, Caribbean, and Pacific states that you will keep knowing more. So back to you, because I think everything is done. I just want to say that it's recorded and the PowerPoints will be available, so no questions about that. You will receive them. And also please make the comments and the questions in the chat for now. I mean, because of numbers, we might not open the floor directly. Let's see. Thank you, Kyle. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Selena, and thank you, Chairman, Stephen. It's awesome to watch the chat. See people joining from Africa, Kenya, Malawi, from the Pacific, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, the Cook Islands, from Fiji. It's just awesome to be able to exchange information, knowledge. Also, we understand that some of our development partners, as Iselina mentioned, from the European Union and OACP are joining. So it's a great opportunity to really talk about what the opportunities, but also the constraints. And we have an awesome panel. And I'm so excited to introduce all of them. I'm excited also because we represent a few different models. So first, we're going to hear from Donna Shapiro, who is the co-founder and general manager of the Hawaii Ulu Cooperative, working on breadfruit. It's one of the largest cooperatives in Hawaii, and they're a leading breadfruit farmer. And we're very excited to hear about how they're taking this underutilized traditional crop, adding value on behalf of their members, and really contributing to the food security of this island. And so it's great to hear that cooperative model. Then from Hawaii, we'll go to the Kingdom of Tonga, where we will hear from Minoru Nishi, who is the managing director of a family-owned commercial farming operation, but also an exporter and processor that is sourcing from smallholder farmers across Tonga. And Minoru will be able to talk about the development of their export markets for fresh, but also about the exciting opportunities in value adding and the opportunities that they have to source more raw products from smallholder farmers across Tonga. And then we will finish, of course, with Dr. Richard Baer. If you're from the Pacific, he's certainly not a stranger. He's been working in agro-processing development for the last 50 years, 30 years, 40 years. He will share with us, but really a wealth of knowledge, working at the village community level, at the small and micro enterprise, and even with the big processors in the region. And so we're really hoping that Richard is going to share with us, some of his experiences and how can we take this sector and make it more meaningful. We're really excited. Without any further delays, I'm going to hand over the floor to Donna from the Ulu Co-op to talk to us about breadfruit. So thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Kyle and Isolina and Chair Minta for the opportunity to share with everyone today. Really happy to be here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So as Kyle just introduced me, thanks for the introduction. My name is Donna, and I co-founded and lead the Hawaii Ulu Cooperative. And I'm just going to share sort of our story, and hopefully it will be helpful to some of you out there all over the world. So the Hawaii Ulu Co-op really started from our farm. And this is a picture of my family on our farm. We started a farm, it's very small, it's less than 4 acres in South Kona, which was a region that used to have an extensive breadfruit agroforest before European contact in Hawaii just a few hundred years ago. An agroforest that was a very central food production system for the region and for the island for hundreds of years. And my husband is actually a professor at the University of Hawaii in indigenous crops. And together we started this farm with a mission to revitalize, or actually to restore is a better word, to restore this little tiny sliver of the Kalu Ulu, this traditional breadfruit agroforest. And we started planting our trees in 2015, so 7 years ago. Wait, 9 years ago. How time flies. And we realized very quickly that as a single small farm with young trees, and breadfruit trees take at least 5 years to fruit in Hawaii, and about 10 years until they're fully productive. So as a very small farm with a bunch of young trees that weren't fruiting, it was very hard to become viable and to really make an impact, the kind of impact that we wanted to make around revitalizing this traditional food source. And so my personal background is in cooperatives. I was born and raised my early years on a small rural kibbutz in Israel, which is a cooperative farming community. And so I sort of had this cooperative background personally, but I also ended up doing my master's in cooperative business strategy. So I already, had sort of a really good picture in my mind of what a cooperative could do for small farmers like us. And that led us to start to do outreach, just really grassroots outreach in the community to see if there were other breadfruit farmers who might be interested in forming a farmer co-op. And there ended up being a core group of nine founding members. And in 2016, we incorporated as a farmer-owned cooperative. Why really was there this need for a producer, a farmer organization? Well, first of all, ulu as an indigenous crop really suffers from nowadays a lack of consumer familiarity. Most consumers in Hawaii, like in many other countries, subsist on rice, wheat, and potatoes for us, all of which are imported. And so there's really this need to sort of re-educate the population in a way. And this is more than a single farm can handle. Additionally, for ulu, you have these real concrete practical challenges due to the low shelf life, the seasonality, because it's a fruit after all. And then in Hawaii, a lot of our historic breadfruit trees were cut down. And so we actually don't have a huge supply anymore. And the modern breadfruit industry, if you can call it that, is primarily based on new trees that have been planted in just the last 10 or 15 years. And so for all these sort of inherent challenges for ulu, value adding is really important in order to build the market and in order to move economy of scale. And so, these were the reasons that the 9 founding farmers in 2016 decided to form a co-op. And we were all we had a shared set of values and a shared understanding of kind of the challenge and the opportunity. And so in Hawaii, for those of you that don't live here, I'm not sure sort of how well known it is, but we are really, really dependent on imported foods, not just in the staple food group, but overall. We import about 90% of our food and more than 99% of our staples, which puts Hawaii at in a very precarious food security position. We are the most isolated sort of island chain in the world. And so it can take weeks for food to arrive in the event of an emergency. And breadfruit has this amazing potential to really solve this problem on a lot of different levels. And, you know, you can see some of that here. But the farmers that came together in 2016 were very much united around this vision. So I think that's an important point to make. This is just a quick snapshot of how a cooperative works, or how our co-op works anyway. So our farmers own the business and they patronize the co-op by supplying us with fruit. We aggregate. We now have almost 160 farmers. I'll share more about that in the next slide. So we aggregate to reach economies of scale, and then we do all the processing, all the agro-processing. The co-op sort of decides which products to make, raises capital to invest in manufacturing capacity, equipment, and so forth, which is really expensive. You know, we kind of have a marketing department, so we design the packaging. You can see here, this is our retail bag. And then we do kind of the marketing, the education to help build demand. And then hopefully people buy all of our value-added products, and the profits are redistributed back to the farmer members according to patronage, which is their relative share of the total fruit contributed. So if our farm ends up contributing 5% of the co-op's raw crop supply for a given year, we would be entitled to 5% of the profits that get redistributed back to farmers. And that's sort of how the business model works in a nutshell. So this is our growth, our membership growth. It's been pretty organic since the start. This is a little bit dated, but I believe now we're up to 158 farmers. Most of our farmers are still on Hawaii Island. That's where I'm based. But we do have some farmers on 3 other islands as well. So we're sort of spread out across the archipelago. And this is just a snapshot of who our farmers are. They're very representative of Hawaii farmers overall. So they tend to be very small scale, very diversified, and to a large extent, not full-time commercial. We have a lot of part-time commercial farmers, a lot of backyard subsistence growers who just have more than enough. They produce more than enough for themselves. So the co-op offers a very easy market outlet that's really reliable and guaranteed for them. A few interesting demographic points are that our farmers are actually younger than the average farmer in the state by about 13 years. A lot are beginning farmers, so they're sort of new into farming and getting started with breadfruit. And we have a higher percentage of Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander farmers than the average farmer in Hawaii. And this is just how our volumes have grown over time. So the pink bar is ulu, or breadfruit, and the blue bar is what we call co-crops, which are basically other crops that our farmers grow in conjunction with their breadfruit trees on their farms. We really encourage diversified agroforestry practices as a more sustainable, more resilient, and economically viable way to grow breadfruit, because again, with a 5 to 10 year lead time before your trees start to mature, it's really helpful to have shorter term crops growing alongside your trees. And most of our farmers do that. And then here is what you've been waiting for. So this is our product line. We started out with these bulk, very simple product. It's a bulk kind of food service size case box. So this is a 10-pound case. And the product is just minimally processed breadfruit. We clean it, peel it, core it, par steam it, and freeze it. So it's available year round. The goal here really was to create a consistent product that is available all year for restaurants, schools, hospitals, commercial kitchens to put on their menus. We haven't yet quite been able to fully realize this simply because demand is higher than supply still. And so in the early years, we'd get toward the start of the following season and we'd still have a lot of fruit, and we really had to go out there and market hard, really put a lot of energy into that. But nowadays, we don't have any supply, and so we're hoping to buy more frozen breadfruit from Minoru. But so the market for this bulk frozen ulu is the strongest that we have across our entire product line. And that, that's the result of a lot of hard work in marketing for sure since the beginning. But also, we're part of a larger movement for sure. So there was sort of there was an initiative that I think in many ways the co-op is an outcome of, to revitalize these crops. And so we've been a big part of it, but we're part of a larger effort. And so it's been really helpful to have this whole community actually working toward the same end goal as us. And so, yeah, a few years ago, as you can see in the volume slide earlier, we started diversifying into co-crops, and those are shown here. We have kalo or taro, pala'ai or pumpkin, and uala or sweet potato. And we try to lead with the Hawaiian name for all of these crops. They are all traditional Hawaiian crops with the exception of the pumpkin. Our sweet potato is actually a Japanese variety, this dark purple color that was brought to Hawaii during the sugar plantation days. But there's many different varieties of sweet potato or uala that were brought to Hawaii by the Polynesians. And so this is sort of the full array of those crops in our retail packaging. And we tried to stay really true to the crop itself. So you can see the bags, for example, are actually printed with a picture of the skin of or the flesh of each of the crops, so that for the consumer, it's an educational experience. They're getting to know, oh, this is what kalo looks like, even though I'm buying it ready to cook with, or we call it recipe ready. And similarly, they're learning the Hawaiian name of these traditional staple foods. So we try to incorporate as much education into the product as we can. Early on, we also started developing ready-to-eat products. This is our ulu, our breadfruit hummus, which uses local macadamia nuts in place of tahini, as well as inamona, which is roasted kukui nuts. It's another Polynesian crop. So again, incorporating as much kind of other local products into our breadfruit products as possible. And then we also have a dairy-free ulu chocolate mousse with coconut milk and local honey. And these are products that we developed really early on in order to use our B-grade fruit. So we were processing this nice, clean, par-cooked ulu for restaurants, but there's so much variability in breadfruit. And in a lot of these traditional staples, actually, there's a huge range of qualities that we get. And so to better serve our farmers, we don't like to turn away any fruit. And so developing these ready-to-eat products was actually a way for us to use the seconds. And then our most recent sort of product journey has been around ulu flour. And I was quite skeptical about ulu flour initially, just because of the cost of production. In Hawaii, we have really high energy and labor costs. But it's been really great to have a product that doesn't require cold storage, because all of our other products do. They either require freezer storage or chill storage. And so having a truly shelf-stable product has been very helpful. The marketing side and the price competitive side of ulu flour continues to be a challenge, though. Kyle, how much time do I have left?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. So this is just a snapshot of our market and sort of the market opportunity. So, if you look at these traditional staples as a substitute for imported staples, the market opportunity is huge because we're completely reliant on imported staples right now. And the estimate is $1 billion a year. Every year, Hawaii spends on imported staples, and we produce less than 0.5% of our own starches. So looking at it from that perspective, there's a huge market opportunity. But of course, there's a lot of hurdles to overcome: consumer education, price competitiveness, processing, all of those things. But this is sort of our market right now. We supply every type of customer that there is: distributors, grocery stores. We have an online store, other manufacturers, restaurants, hotels, schools, etc. And actually, the COVID pandemic really taught us the importance of market diversification and customer diversification, and just not relying on any one segment or any one customer. So as much as it's challenging to try to serve so many different types of users, we found it to be a risk mitigation strategy. And this is just an overview of, this was our sales in the last fiscal year by customer segment. So you can see manufacturers was a really big group. Community nonprofits was a really big group. Commercial food service was significant. Institutions quite small. This is an area that we're really working on a lot more. Food hubs is interesting. This is basically other local food hub type organizations that are just focused on local and really mission driven and mission aligned to us. And there's a growing food hub movement in Hawaii that we're able to tap into, not just for, you know, mission alignment and camaraderie, but also for sales, which is pretty cool. And this is just a snapshot of our economic impact through this model. So pretty significant growth, again, up to almost 160 members from 9, more than 6,000 trees, up from 2,000, and then sales of about 1.2 last year and growing. This is a quick overview of our facilities, and I'll just kind of wrap it up from here. So we have 2 facilities on Hawaii Island. These are all photos of the one in Kona, which is where we do our frozen manufacturing. We are on a journey of mechanization and doing a lot of R&D around how to mechanize, just to increase efficiencies and sort of reduce the strain on our staff through manual labor. We have another facility in Hilo on the east side of the island where we focus on our flour, and both facilities do aggregation, which is another really important point to mention, is just the importance of aggregating near the farmer, but concentrating processing infrastructure in order to increase efficiencies. And so we actually have aggregation points all over the state, and we try to set up at least one processing partner on each island so that the fruit isn't getting shipped inter-island. Let's see. And this is kind of where we're going next. So as I mentioned, we're really focusing on raising capital to keep mechanizing and upgrading our infrastructure so that the pay price for our farmers can keep growing up and the end price for consumers can start to even go down a little bit, hopefully, to make it more competitive. And so that centerpiece, that middle of the supply chain, agro-processing infrastructure, needs to scale in order to realize those cost savings. And then my last point, and I'll end it here, is I think there's a lot of benefits to farmer organizations serving as agro-processors, because it's very challenging for the farmer to do agro-processing on their own. Cottage industry is great, but it has limited application, especially when we're trying to realize these larger societal impacts of food security, economic development, and so forth. And so I just really commend this group for putting the webinar together, and happy to answer questions now or later. Mahalo.
Oh, fantastic, Donna. Thank you so much. Really great to hear the journey and to have it all talking about a traditional Pacific crop, breadfruit, and there are lots of questions in the question and answer. Donna might be able to get to some of them now in terms of chatting and response, but we have a dedicated question and answer time at the end where we'll be able to bring some of these key ones with some broader application to everybody. But I really thank Donna for that. And we want to move over to our next presenter, to Minoru Nishi. And Minoru is far away from Hawaii in the South Pacific, but has an equally interesting journey. And I think the part that I love so much about these kind of webinars is the value of being able to network. And Donna and Munir only met each other about 2 years ago, but have already visited each other's factories and shared tips and tricks and information. So I think there's just so much value in this kind of collaboration. And so we're thankful that they're also sharing these insights from their businesses. So I'll now hand it over to Minoru Nishi from Nishi Trading, and also, as we mentioned, the chairman of Pacific Farm Organizations. So Minoru, you have 20 minutes. That should bring us to about 55 or 5 minutes to the hour.
Thank you, Kyle, and good morning to everyone, especially to the chairman of COLEAD and Iselina. Thank you for the opportunity. And I just listened to your opening remarks, Mr. Chairman. We have a lot in common between your region and our region in the Pacific, and it's really nice to hear that. And I'm sure that we can find time to collaborate in the future. Just to start off, I guess I'm very different from Dana's operation in Uru Cooperative in Hawaii, in the sense that we are mainly fresh produce at the moment, but migrating over to value adding, although we've done some work in the last few years and research into breadfruit production and processing it into flour and also frozen. But there's definitely a lot of challenges along our way, because we live in Tonga as a small island nation, very different from Hawaii, and whereby they rely all their consumption from imported goods. In terms of the business, a second generation business, family business. My father was a subsistence grower here in Tonga, just like any other farmer in Tonga back in the early 70s. So we started off with 8-acre piece of land here, and we've grown the business over the years, relying only on export of fresh squash to Japan market, which was a booming industry here, which got up to about $400 million. And it's now a dying industry in Tonga, which was one of the reasons why we decided to try and diversify into other crops and find other opportunities in other markets in order to survive. Now we lease most of our land, and most of the land here in Tonga is owned by the nobles and the king. And so every household or male Tongan can only have a maximum of 8 acres, and then the rest is freehold, and then the rest you have to lease out. So the company was registered in 1999, and we've leased about 240 acres of land now for the company as our base. And then we contract smallholder farmers to supply the company with various produce. Like I said before, we started off with squash, and then we dropped the squash. And for the first time this year, we will not be growing squash for the Asian market. Used to be Japan and Korea. But because of the high cost of freight and the uncertainty of the market, being a small player in such a huge a market, we've had to diversify. And so our main market now is in New Zealand and going into Australia. So this snapshot here is really just a photo of the two areas in our factory that we're focusing on. The one on the right there is the ladies processing our frozen breadfruit, and the left is the breadfruit flour. And that's been work done for about 9 years of research work with Tokyo University of Agriculture and our local partner here, Māori Tonga Trust, and the government of Tonga, and funded by the Japanese government and also the university. So we're able to make really high quality breadfruit flour, but the supply is the major issue for us right now. So next slide, please, Excel. So I was given 3 questions to look at. What was the basis for selecting the crops we work with? 2, what are the current market situations for these products? And thirdly, what are some of the key constraints to growth? Next slide. And in addressing these questions, I think it was important for us to look at the analysis of the sector overall in Tonga from a private sector perspective. So these are just some of my thoughts of the strengths, the weaknesses, and opportunities and threats to existence of our business in Tonga. The strengths here, we have good fertile soil in Tonga. I think we have some of the best soils in the Pacific. But a lot of it is arable land, unused. So we have opportunities to grow more crops here for our own sustainability. we have an ideal climate here for growing crops, but also traditional crops here for self-sufficiency. I think during COVID periods, there was a lot of backyard gardening promoted in the Pacific, and especially here in Tonga. But there's room here for us to diversify and grow more of our local crops, but also promote that locally. In terms of weaknesses, I think one of the key areas why we diversified into value adding is the post-harvest losses. Started with the squash business and then also the watermelons. And so it was a big part of our decision to try and get into value adding. The economies of scale here, most of our farmers here, about 95% of our farmers are smallholder farmers and only 5% in commercial. And most of the commercial farmers here are in root crops, frozen crops for exports. We rely heavily on imported food for our consumption. About 60% of the food we consume are all processed and imported, which has a huge negative impact on our health for our people. I think NCDs here is a big killer of our people, and about the average life expectancy of our people now is down to about 64 years old. We lack technical support for our production, both research and development and also extension services for the farmers. And hence why we've done a lot of work as a company internally to reach out to overseas institutions such as the Tokyo University of Agriculture and other institutions for research work, which is really demand driven by the farmers addressing our needs at the grassroots level and at production level. Logistics and freight costs is a huge constraint for us with the isolation where we are in the Pacific and the high cost of fuel, also impacted by the wars around the world. So we're having to look at ways to address some of these issues in terms of logistics. In terms of opportunities, I think we have an opportunity here for niche marketing. We have, in our case here, a sound export based with our importers in New Zealand mainly. And so we're able to get our products in there. But because we're so small in the Pacific, the population of only 104,000, we have to go niche. Import substitution to address the high dependency of imports. I think there's an area here for growth. And also a big part here is the value adding, looking at developing new industries for food security and also employment generation. And of course, the last one here is improve the local technical capacity of our people, engaging with experts like Richard and so forth to bring them over here and build capacity. And that's a long-term investment that we need to continue in order to build capacity. In terms of threat, I think number one here is climate change. And I think this is everybody on the planet. And it's a growing concern for us, especially in the Pacific. And I think this is something we need to put more effort in there and help farmers adapt and to change in terms of climate. International market volatility, like I said before, with the squash and the war in Ukraine. So having to diversify into other crops is an ongoing initiative of ours and in terms of value adding. Currency fluctuations, again, the fuel costs, and we're dependent on foreign currency for most of our production for export. And so that has impact on our bottom line. This is another big one here, the loss of human resources. Most of our, it's actually growing every year, and we're finding it really difficult now. Every week we are having to get new employees because they're only here very short term, and then they use our company as a name in order to apply for jobs overseas in New Zealand and Australia for seasonal workers. So it's good in a way that foreign currency comes through labor force, but it's also draining our skilled labor force in Tonga and affecting our production. Natural disasters and COVID, and then biosecurity risks of fresh produce, which is another concern for us, and hence why the need to look at value adding. And of course, logistics with shipping. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slides. Okay, next slide, please. So look at 3 crop lines here for the decision for going into value adding. A big one here is watermelon losses. In 2020, we lost about 70% of our watermelons due to the interception of fruit fly in New Zealand. And therefore, a lot of these farmers had to dump their watermelons, feeding pigs in the local market. or just giving it away in sacks. So it was a huge concern for us as a business, but also for the country. And so, you know, we looked at the farmers asked us, what can we do with our, you know, with our reject watermelons? Because the biosecurity and protocol for pathway watermelons into New Zealand is so high that most of it gets rejected here in Tonga. And so we looked at opportunities to freeze or make juice out of that, and we brought in a expert out of New Zealand to look at the viability of that. We haven't been able to achieve that because I think there's a bit more work still to be done. But I'll mention a little bit about that later on in the piece to show what can be done in the near future, hopefully. Squash, it gets up to about 40% reject in terms of grading in the pack house. And again, demonstrates just the impact of fresh exports to overseas markets that, you know, we really need to look at value adding. The breadfruit one is an interesting one. It's an informal industry still here in Tonga, very much so. On average, there's about 3 breadfruit trees in the backyard of each household in Tonga, and that's not counting the tax allotment, but there's a lot more. But on average, is about 68% reject on the ground that just rots in homes. This year, we're seeing probably the most fruit on the trees this season. And we've just started advertising and processing breadfruit this last couple of weeks. And we're having a meeting with Dana on Friday to see how we can secure some breadfruit for her off-season in Hawaii, which is going to be an interesting one. But yeah, so a lot of people are calling, even from the outer islands now, asking us if we can take their breadfruit. So we're restricted in the fact that we don't have a processing center there. We don't have the right technical expertise to look at how we can actually capture some of that. So there's a lot of work in progress in that area for the future. Next slide, please. So the key areas of focus for us is looking at product diversification, more into root crops such as cassava, taro, turmeric. We've planted a lot of turmeric recently. There's a demand. We're looking at import substitution just for the locals, but also value adding for export into maybe a niche market into the United States, where we had visitors last year come to us. The drought in the last couple of years has meant that taro, there's a massive taro shortage now here in Tonga, but also Samoa. I also understand that they have a shortage of taro, which is driving the price in New Zealand and Australia, and the demand is high. As it stands now, we can't supply the market with the current supply. Import substitution, we're increasing our production of potatoes and onions for the local market. We brought in a volunteer agronomist from Australia last year. We've helped expand our season. So rather than just planting once or twice, we're able to plant maybe 4 times of our potatoes this year, and then twice on the onions. Again, expanding our opportunity for the domestic market and cutting the imports, but also raising income for families here, and also the government in terms of taxes. We pay 15% on sales tax to the government through our domestic sales of fresh produce or any processed produce here in Tonga. And promotion of healthier locally grown processed foods such as moringa and the breadfruit and the turmeric. Again, addressing the issue of NCDs in the local market. Next slide, please. This is some of the products that we're currently working on in terms of value adding. Like I said before, the watermelons, but also we have a citrus project here with ACIR, which is a Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research in Australia. We're in our 6th year of that project, and it's going really well. A lot of people here didn't think that citrus will grow well here in Tonga, but in our first year we had a lot of our limes, lemons fruited, and in our third and 4th year we started seeing the mandarins, and now we're mobilizing a lot of those trees into the communities and propagating that with our NGO partner, Māori Tonga Trust. And so we're in our 2nd phase of this project, and hoping to improve and expand on that in order to look at value adding. On the right there, you see there's the 2 pictures there of a watermelon frozen watermelon pulp in red and limes. I saw this in my recent trip to Thailand, where I was prompted by the juicing specialist out of Hawke's Bay, New Zealand, to look at this in Thailand. So I bought that in a supermarket in Thailand and brought it back with me. So this is something we're going to look at, because there's also a lot of limes being grown in the communities here through our project. But my main concern here is looking how we can actually utilize the rejects from the watermelons of the growers rather than having them all wasted on the side of the road or feeding pigs. The breadfruit, some of the products that we make from breadfruit, the flour, we pack them into 500 grams. Our limitation here is equipment. We're not at the scale of Dana yet, but we do believe that it's a really good quality breadfruit flour. We've had orders from the market in Australia. They wanted 2 containers of this 500-gram packs. And I said to them, well, come back maybe in 3 years' time, and we've had production up and actually had equipment in the facility to process flour. But I think most of the products here would go into frozen, and then the small portion, maybe 10% of that, would go into flour, and would be probably similar to the path that Dana has taken in value adding, but it's going to take us a little bit more time. The squash we've tried also. There's 3 types of squash that we have growing here: butternut, butterkin, and pumpkin. That we've bought the rejects from the growers and started making hummus. It took off really well here, but we were just trying to educate the consumers here to take our frozen pumpkin packs, which is the yellow packs that you see, and make the hummus at home. But people were wanting, for convenience, they wanted us to make it. we didn't have the human resource, the manpower to actually do that, but we actually made a really nice hummus. So what we've done now is just focus on making frozen chunks, and we've sent 3 tons into the New Zealand market of 3 different varieties to try and test it. And so far, we've had really good feedback from the New Zealand market on this trial that went a few weeks back. We've also packed our fresh and frozen produce into cartons, which are in about 20 kg cartons, and we sent off our first container of frozen taro, cassava, and frozen pumpkin to New Zealand market, and that's been well received. So again, it's just the packaging, trying to get it doing a little bit more different, and to be competitive in the market with different packaging. And it's been received really well in the New Zealand market. We also do the same for our watermelons. It's air freighted. The current market situation, sorry, the next slide. The current market situation for the watermelons, and we've received 2 orders now for our watermelons into New Zealand. 1,100 ton. One company is 500 ton, and the other is 600 ton. We had 2 more importers to come with their orders. But unfortunately, I don't think with the capacity we have, we'll be able to get 1,100 ton. Our target this year is 500 ton. Last year, we did 30 ton and was all air freighted. Back in 2020 and 21, we did almost 500 ton. But because of the COVID and also the shipping issue and the fruit fly interception in New Zealand, the confidence in the farmers dropped significantly, and then they pulled back from growing. But this year, there's a lot of farmers coming forward to grow because we've been able to secure air freight options for them. In terms of the breadfruit in New Zealand market, there's a minimum of 600 metric ton demand from the market there, but we also have gaps in the local market in the off season. So we're trying to process that through this year and hopefully hold some here for the domestic market in the off season. At the same time, hopefully we can send some to Hawaii. Similar with taro, the taro market is booming in New Zealand and Australia, but there's a shortage because of the drought last year. Next slide. So this is some of the constraints for our growth, the technical training support for our processing here, for our staff, but also our farmers. This picture on the left here is just youth that we've employed in the pack house. All of them now have all gone on an overseas workers scheme into New Zealand, Australia. And then Sorry, you can go back one more. And then the picture on the right there is a school that we've high schooled here that we've given our facility free of charge as part of our outreach charity to them. They've processed over 3 containers here of frozen cassava and taro in order to support the operation of the school in the last 2 years. And we've also helped grow some of their crops and also bought some of their taro for our own market overseas. This is our cool store in the middle, and this is where we lack technical support for equipment, but also training of the operation of the management of the facility. We've since now cut this into 2 areas, into 2 chambers, and we've got some support from Farmer Plus, which is another organization in the region supported by New Zealand, Australia, to bring a scientist next month to do some scoping work here to put more equipment here in order to control the temperatures of the various crops that we bring in here in order to prolong the shelf life. We also still lack a lot of equipment. Dana is probably more advanced in that space. Since meeting Dana here in Tonga, I've also bought some peeling machines, a little bit different from Dana. It's more semi-manual and automatic, but that's helped increase the productivity in terms of our peeling of our taro and also breadfruit. But we're still a long way in order to scale production. The high energy costs here in Tonga is huge. The power here costs about $1.06 a kilowatt an hour, which is quite significant. It used to be 82 cents. And so what we've done here is put in solar in order to address the high cost of energy. And of course, the unreliable high freight costs, which I talked about before. Okay, the solution, in terms of our technical support, we've hired a food processing specialist from Fiji and with over 20 years of experience. This person is hopefully going to arrive later this week, and hopefully he'll run the factory, but also the pack house in terms of providing technical training for the staff, but also making sure that it's viable. We're also partnering with Farmer Plus and PIFON to bring technical support for our production on the farm, but also cool store. Like I said before, we're bringing in a farmer that's been working, an agronomist that's been working for British American Tobacco for 22 years in Fiji. And again, hopefully we'll get him in the next month or so in order to run the farm and run workshops for our farmers in terms of our production for our produce that we export. I talked about the solar already, so I don't need to mention that. And also we've secured air freight space for all produce to New Zealand on a weekly basis. We just confirmed yesterday from Air New Zealand again that they're putting in another flight at the end of May. So 2 flights a week now on a Wednesday and Friday, and with a space of 30 ton per flight, which is going to double our capacity from last year to 60 ton a week, which is a great opportunity for us to capitalize on this. And the freight rate, although is higher than the sea freight rate, but they're able to drop the price down by about 2/3, which is a big plus for us to make sure that the produce gets to market in a good condition, but also still happy for the farmers to take a cut in terms of the return, but at least they find the guaranteed revenue and paid on as soon as the ship leaves. Okay. Next slide. I think that's it for me, Kyle, and the team. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minur, for sharing that amazing journey. And I know that those constraints just take up a few bullet points, but in reality, they are huge. And so thank you for sharing just the story of innovation and being able to adapt. We're very excited for some of these new processing lines. Thank you to all of those who are posting your questions. If you haven't, please go to the question and answer section and post some questions. And thank you, Donna. Donna had been giving some answers there, and we'll also taking some of those questions forward. We now want to just hear from Richard Baer. So we've heard from a few of the different private sector, so the cooperative model, the family-owned export processing model, and Dr. Richard Baird has been working across all of these different size of businesses, and we're hoping that Richard can share with us a little bit, and for the participants that are here, maybe people that are interested to get involved in agro-processing, maybe development partners that are looking to invest into agro-processing. Maybe you can share with us some of your experience as we kind of journey into this next phase, which, as both Donna and Minoru said, is really critical for food security, but also for new livelihood opportunities. Agro-processing is such an important sector, but I dare to say we haven't even scratched the surface as far as exploiting the potential. So we'll hand it over to you, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyle, and certainly thank you to COLEAD and everyone. I see that time is running a little bit short, so I'm going to give some very short, sharp messages and illustrate it. Can I have my slides, please? But I'll run through them very quickly. Okay, thank you. Yeah, great. That's just an introductory one. Can we just keep moving quickly, because I do want to have a little bit of time for questions and discussion. I would point out too that I am available electronically at any stage. And this morning I had something like 5 emails ranging from the Solomon Islands to Ponape about products that are going through the system. It's very obvious that there are many reasons why we should get involved in value adding. You know them, so why am I going to go through them and waste time? It optimizes use of local crops, creates employment, etc., provides markets, establishes value chains. Just keep going, because we are a little bit short of time. There are very many opportunities for value adding. Next slide, please. Right. I'm not going to bore you stupid. I just did a quick count this morning, but I think there's something like 30 products since I've been doing this, which is really effectively since 2000, with a very short stint in agriculture, developing some policy which went nowhere. There are lots and lots of opportunities. These are a couple of products that are doing very well. On the left are frozen French fries made from sweet potato kamala. On the right is a local lychee, which we call it in Darwin. Next one, please. And we've talked about turmeric. Well, turmeric, ginger, and chilies are the big ones in Fiji at the moment. And there's a couple of value-added products. So one on the left is an interesting one. I'm sorry that the signs have gone. That is a local dish called pulasami. It's made from coconut milk and not taro leaves, but one of our local leaves. There's 30, so I will bore you stupid. So let's move away from those. You can ask me about them, of course, all the 30 that I've done. I've got two major messages. Of the 12 countries that I visit, some more frequently than others, I think it's fair to say that the private sector is going to be the driving force that changes lifestyles and GDP in the developing nations, certainly here in Fiji and some of the little tiny atoll states who have got involved in product development, who have got involved in value adding, and have generated some overseas income either through direct exports or through secondary exports from the tourism sector. So that's one issue. The next issue where I will conclude is really to sort of come up with a strategy that might support that. And I'm halfway through that at the moment, but I'll discuss that later. You all know that successful value adding requires raw material supply of varying quality, the technology, and we've heard a lot about the technology. Now, the market is an interesting one because the market is always easier to achieve than you think. It's just a question of your product developer building in sufficient features for someone to part with dollars. And that's what you're after. And it may be that you're dealing with very, very small volumes. We all are in the Pacific. So you build in the very, very special features that make it unique. And there you manage to get right at the top of what we call the value-adding pyramid. Very small volumes, but very high price. In years gone past, Fiji has attempted to trade in commodities, which is right at the bottom of that pyramid. Large volumes, virtually no profit. And where have we got? Nowhere. So this is really where we want to be. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, we've talked a lot about the raw materials, and I want to just dwell on this a little bit. Because I don't think that here in Fiji, which is one of the larger of the Pacific Islands, Hawaii accepted, and the Solomons accepted, although the activity in the Solomons is confined to fairly small areas. But throughout the Pacific, the issue of raw material supply is the issue. Now, I don't think, and I did spend a little bit of time in government, and I don't think that we ever really got to the bottom of farmer priorities. Now, the farmer priorities are always, well, we want to grow more, but no one has actually sat down. Well, that's not true. We've only had one or two funding agencies that have actually sat down with farmers to talk to them about their priorities. And we've managed to address those in an ACR, that's Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, with a participatory guarantee scheme where some of our farmers were actually linked to the resorts, because resorts were a big issue here, a big market here. And so we were able to really get to the bottom of priorities. But as a government, we were hopeless. When I was sitting in government, I freely accept that we were hopeless. So where are the research priorities? Well, the thing is that I don't think that the farmers and the private sector and the research organizations have ever got together. And I've actually started work on this. I've produced a discussion document which will really try to get the interested parties or the participatory parties together. In Fiji, we have 8 organizations actively involved in ground research. And these are sort of governments, the government, the 2 universities, and I'm about to review the third university here to bring them into line with agriculture. But USP and SPC, and just more recently, we now have SPREP here, and I'm working with SPREP on a little project in one of our tiny islands. So there's a lot of organizations actively involved in research. I spoke to the minister, the current Minister of Agriculture. He told me of 7 research priorities that they're undertaking in their research division, and only one of them is really relevant to the private sector. The priorities are set by politics, by the funding agencies, and by finance. Just recently, I was at a Pacific Agricultural Conference, and I was listening to some of the papers, which were very interesting. 2 things struck me. The first thing is that the funding agencies have a sort of bee in their bonnet, which may have been driven by a local researcher and thought, oh, well, the work I'm doing here it may be useful for the Pacific. And a perfect example was something like quite a large sum of money going into capsicum research. Well, capsicum is not part of the Fiji diet, and we're never likely to be in a position where we're going to export it. But that same money going into extending supplies of kamala or breadfruit or something like that, using varieties or partial processing or careful storage or those sorts of things, no money's going there at all. And in terms of government, of course, it's decided by finance. And the private sector, well, if you talk to the private sector here, and I know I probably intimately know about a third, I know about 3/4, and they will always tell you, well, what sort of help are you getting? And the answer is, unless they've gone straight to a funding agency, the answer is usually zero. So can I go to the next slide, please? Can I have the next one? I don't know how to do it myself from here.
Axel, can you pass the next one?
Can you press the next slide, please?
Or is it?
That's it. Okay, so there are 3 products that I did the technical work. Now, I don't necessarily work these days. In fact, I work very little with large organizations. I've spent a good part of my professional career making rich people richer, and I'm not going to do that anymore. But I did make an exception here because I saw the opportunity for producing some commercial crops. All 3 of these products are now off the market. Okay, they had a big launch. A lot of money was spent on packaging, product development. Why are they not on the market? Because they simply cannot get the raw material supply. So can I have the next slide, please? You see, the discussion paper that I put together means that really you have to get into the same room, the producers, the farmers, the in-country private sector, the research institution, the government, and the funding agencies. And I've spoken to some of the funding agencies, ACI, SBC, and now more recently, SPREP, who are here in Fiji. And they really are looking for guidance. You know, they don't see this as a criticism, but they really do need guidance. Instead of just blanket bombing with, oh, this is a good idea and we can do it, then really it is responding really to what the producers and the private sector are. As I said right at the beginning, and I make no apology for repeating it, it's the private sector that's going to approve the GDP in the 12 nations, that I work with in the Pacific. And then, of course, you've got to include the research institutions, because then they change their emphasis and move towards actually providing work to support this activity. And of course, the government. Now, the government here in Fiji, and I suspect it's the same around the Pacific, that they do not have very much in the way of discretionary income. Agriculture, as a former head of agriculture here, I know agriculture doesn't give you results tomorrow. Therefore, it's not a popular ministry for disbursement of funds from the government. So they're always battling. But so that means that they really do have to make the best possible use of any resources they have, particularly involved in research and development, and to listen to farmers. And I think that really is my message. And look, I wanted to keep this really brief. In fact, I think I was only given 10 minutes. Someone said, talk about 30 years in 10 minutes. Well, I'm pretty good, but I'm not that good. So look, I've kept it to about 10 minutes or so, in the hope that we've generated discussion. Just before I finish, Dana, I have to tell you that I now have, I think 4, and one on the way, 4 shelf-stable products that have been developed from breadfruit, and I'm not talking about flour. And I'm happy to talk to you. Once again, I would stress that I'm very happy to talk to you, but from Saturday, I have end-on-end contracts until the end of May. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 contracts between May and December, but that time is discretionary. So look, thanks very much for listening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk. Thank you for allowing me to ride my hobby horse. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. And really some powerful message coming out there. And I think some really good takeaways about the importance of sitting down and having these discussions amongst government, farmers, processors, and development partners. And I think that's what we're looking for, are some of these takeaways. And certainly our organization in COLEAD is not here to just listen and talk, but to plan for some possible initiatives. So we do have a bit more time, and we're so thankful to have all of these questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Iselina to facilitate some of these question and answers.
Thank you very much. It has been actually more appreciation and enthusiasm and admiration and congratulations about the work and the packaging, and perhaps one that will go to the two companies, private sector we have, and it's common. It's recurrent in our work as well as COLEAD, is about the packaging, of course, absolutely necessary when you talk about processing. And going with the packaging is the question of the equipment. We have the questions on that. How do you source it? Is it difficult to get it? For Dana and Minoru. And of course, with the packaging goes often as well the labeling. And with the labeling, sometimes is different information you have to give, including nutritional, etc., etc. So if our speakers could say a bit more about that one. Actually, there is one, of course, that we always have, and I would like to highlight it, perhaps because not only, but certainly in the Pacific, how smallholders are organized, and now is for Dana on the question of the cooperatives. Because it's not at all my experience, but I still battle with the case that sometimes cooperatives might be difficult because people, drop out because they are not that organized, because it's difficult to go to the processing segment, and sometimes they are more associated with actually the primary production, which I think is not the case, and you certainly have demonstrated that it's not. If you could say a few words on cooperatives that sometimes still are a bit labeled in some parts of the world as, not very kind of an efficient route, which is absolutely not what I know some of the biggest cooperatives, which are including in Europe, extremely successful and at a very large scale, by the way. And then one that I actually can add is with that processing and product differentiation and product development, and going to the local markets. For example, Nishi Trading, with a big experience on export markets, they're very efficient for many, many years. Has it been easy then to, that experience that you got, has it been easy to then be sourcing on local markets? And as you are also promoting local products, is it well received now by the consumers? Did you see a bit of a progress there that, versus imported products? Is it now more interest, more spending on those products, more recognition? So I will start by those ones. Dana, perhaps Minoru, as you want. Minoru, go on.
Yeah, thank you, Selena. In terms of packaging, we started off getting our packaging from Fiji many, many years ago. And then we had some quality issues in terms of the packaging for our frozen lines. And then we went to New Zealand, but the cost again went up so significantly. Recent years, we've managed to get good quality products, packaging from China. So all our packaging now is designed and manufactured in China, and they can make it very, very quickly. And even with the air freight cost, is still significantly cheaper than getting it sourced from New Zealand, and they're really high quality. We've just sent off a co-branding. I didn't have it in this presentation, but we've just done a co-branding with one of our importers in New Zealand of frozen lines of taro and cassava. And it's really, really beautiful, high quality packaging. In terms of the export, yes, our biggest market is the fresh export. And we have the 4 biggest importers in New Zealand we deal with, and they go straight into the supermarkets. But for that, we have to have food safety systems in place, HACCP, which is, I think everybody knows what that is. And so the compliance costs there are high, and maintaining the facility because it's a seasonal thing, but we have fixed costs, so it's quite high in terms of maintaining the facility, the system, and also lost my chain of thought there. Yeah, we also have a sea container hygiene system that we have adopted from the Ministry of Primary Industries in New Zealand, and that's another compliance that we have to have for our containers, which allows our containers to enter the market without inspection from 100% down to 5%. So we've been able to maintain that, but that gets audited every year, and we pay for the MPI team to come over from New Zealand. In terms of the domestic market, it's still very early days for us, but our moringa powder, which is a superfood, it's being received very well here in Tonga. The market here is very, very small though, but there's increasing demand for the domestic market. The challenges for us is having a full-time person like Dana as a marketing arm with development of products and so forth. The good thing is that we have this food technologist, experienced person coming over hopefully in the next week or so to do the product development, and then the next step will be getting a marketing person to fund that person to come in and drive the sales for us.
Dana, perhaps, yes. Dana, you are muted. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry about that. So for us on the equipment side, we've found that the cheapest equipment and sometimes the most available is also from China. They have a lot of small factories that are working on tropical crops, such as breadfruit and taro, and they are also able to customize fabrication pretty quickly. But for us, there's always a lot of like little tweaks and hiccups with ordering from China, including the language barrier. So it's really important to have somebody on the team on your side that can troubleshoot and even do a little bit extra customization on the equipment after you've received it, as well as a really good electrician to wire it. So it doesn't come without any problems, but that is definitely the most cost-effective option. For us, once we have done enough R&D that we know like exactly what kind of machine we need, we will typically try to find the model made in the US or in Europe because it's just much higher quality. So that's one thing, but that's only after we're like positive that this is the machine we want. For packaging, we work with a local company that has their own factory in China. So they're local in Hawaii, but they have a factory in China where they manufacture the bags. But they're based here. And then we have another one in California that we work with for the printed containers. On the marketing side, we've definitely seen an increase in local consumer awareness and acceptance as a result of, very concerted kind of public education campaigns, especially with schools. That's another commonality that we have with Nishi Trading is we do a lot of farm to school, primary education type activities to really build the knowledge from a young age, but then also bring the whole family to the table. We found it to be very effective. We have a policy where we don't export until local demand is saturated because Hawaii has that big problem with importing 99.5% of its staple foods. which actually makes us work a lot harder because we feel like there's a lot of market potential. People just don't know yet. They just don't understand. But there's also a real hurdle with pricing because the imported staples are so much cheaper and it becomes almost a social justice thing. You know, who can afford to buy local? It's not everybody. And so price is a real barrier. And I think that there does need to be public sector involvement to support with subsidies or grant programs or something to make sure that these local foods, these healthy local foods, are accessible to everybody locally. So that continues to be a struggle. And then on the co-op model, you know, co-ops are definitely a unique type of business structure. And so, you know, they don't work everywhere, obviously. But I will say that I think there is some misinformation about the failure rate of co-ops because co-ops actually have a higher success rate than non-co-op businesses. It's just that when co-ops fail, it tends to be more public because they're community-based. So I think that there is a little bit of misinformation out there that gives co-ops a bad rap. I think some of what I've learned that is sort of key to the success of co-ops is the shared need among the farmers for the services that the co-op provides. So, you know, a co-op exists to serve sort of the unmet need, the shared unmet need of the farmers. And so if that need changes and the co-ops don't evolve or adapt, then they become obsolete. And I think that's often when the co-ops, you know, end up closing or declining is when they're no longer serving that common need. Or maybe the farmers' need becomes more varied and the farmers themselves don't have as much in common when some grow and have more economic capacity and others are still small. So that's a challenge. But then, you know, they're also a democratically governed organization. So all of that messiness and all of the potential conflict is right there in the middle of it. So that's challenging, right? You have to work through it and hopefully you have good people who want to work together even when times get tough.
Thank you very much. Richard, add also a few words. And Kyle, do you have questions to add from your side? Something else? No? Richard?
Yeah, a couple of things that I'd like to pick up on. First of all, let's talk about packaging. We're all very concerned about packaging, but I have to tell you, as a microbiologist or a former microbiologist, we've isolated two bacteria have been isolated. One which will actually metabolize polyethylene terephthalate, that's PET, that's the Coke bottles. And so it's just now the companies involved are now just bulking up those bacteria so that they can start generating operations which will actually destroy PET. And the other one, there's another one which is on similar lines, which is polythene. So it looks as though well beyond my lifetime, but in the next maybe 30 years or 20 or 30, well, hopefully shorter than that, then it would be possible to dispose of those two types of packaging. But here in Fiji, we use a lot of recycled packaging. I work with villagers, pardon me, and we're using glass jars with metal lids, which we can purchase, but which we recycle. The third thing that I want to talk about is just very, very briefly is labeling. Now, labeling, I do beg your pardon. Labeling is decided by Codex Alimentarius. There are no ifs, ands, buts, or maybes. Occasionally, other marketing blocks like FSANZ, Food Standards Australia, New Zealand, US FDA, and the EU may require a little bit more. But in terms of what needs to go onto a label, it's set by Codex. And if you need that information and you need some assistance with the nutrition panel, I'm very happy to help you online. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyle. I don't know if you have, from your side, more questions. We had some bilateral that were already answered. Thank you very much for having done that. I think, of course, this is just the start of a conversation. I mean, it's just launching, and I'm happy as well to see that there are many exchanges, business exchanges. Is not as Pacific Farmers Organization and COLEAD have foreseen those dialogues as just business meetings, but it's very good to see that part as well, because it's private sector, from smallholders to small and medium enterprises and eventually bigger ones. So we are happy to see that. And of course, as time goes on, we can develop, or we can use some of the tools we have, on both sides, on fairs for business to business, etc. Access to finance that we haven't spoken today, or just briefly. So there is so much related to agro-processing. But I think you are better placed than me, Kai, to bring unfortunately, unless there are pressing questions, quickly to the end. Because yes, that's what we had planned, and we have to keep with the schedule. But we know now that we have to explore more and more for the next sessions. So Kyle, perhaps you are better placed from the Pacific on agro-processing, which is really at the core of the fantastic work that the Pacific Farmers Organization is doing. And Axel will put again the links for especially the colleagues that are outside the region to talk a bit more on the way forward on that agro-processing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isolina. And thank you to the panelists. I really learned a lot, and I was excited about this series of webinars, because I really am searching for what kind of interventions can we do as these regional organizations to support agro-processing. And I think there were some really tangible suggestions that came out. And I'm hoping with partners like COLEAD and other development partners that we can move beyond these webinars to come up with some new initiatives that especially takes advantage of these networks. The idea that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, that we can learn from each other, share information about packaging and equipment and markets, draw from technical expertise. And this is all so exciting as we try to overcome the tyranny of isolation, right? Being in small countries, isolated from all of this. And so I just want to thank everyone and those that have joined. And we look forward to the next set of webinars, but also for some of the opportunities that will come out of these series of webinars. Please, if you haven't, you can go on to Pacific Farmer Organizations on Facebook or LinkedIn, or go onto our website and subscribe. And equally, so many of these organizations are very active on social media, Nishi and the Ulu Co-op and COLEAD. And so stay connected in that way using these virtual tools until we have our next webinar. And maybe, Isolina, you can just share with everyone the date of the next webinar as we close out.
Yes, we were ambitious to put a next date on 24th of April. And we thought, perhaps people are less interested. But yes, we will go for 24th of April from the, the enthusiasm we have seen today. Very pleased. Same time. So we will also, you will receive from us, since you have registered, as I say, the recording and the presentations and confirmation of the 24th of April.
Well, that concludes. So thank you very much, COLEAD, the chairman. Thank you, my chairman. Thank you, Richard Bear, Donna, all of the colleagues from COLEAD. And thank you to all of the participants for joining and engaging online. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep well.
Thank
you, both chairmen. Yes.
Thank you.